There are moments in history that don't just shake a nation, they shift an entire generation. Moments that make the world stop and realize that silence is no longer peace, it's complicity. And for Africa, that moment came again, this time, from the heart of Tanzania. It started quietly, as it always does. Whispers in the markets. Murmurs in the universities. A growing frustration that could no longer fit inside the silence. The youth had reached a breaking point, not because they wanted chaos, but because they were tired of waiting. Waiting for promises that never came. Waiting for leaders who stopped listening. Waiting for a world that only looked their way when it was time to extract, not empower. For decades, Africa was told to be patient, to develop, to stabilize, to reform. But how long can a generation keep calm while their futures are being auctioned off in boardrooms they will never enter? When the protests hit Tanzania's runways, it wasn't just an act of rebellion, it was an act of symbolism. The rich, the powerful, the connected, those who could always fly away when things got hard, suddenly couldn't. For once, everyone was grounded. The air smelled of smoke and resistance. It wasn't just about blocking planes, it was about blocking privilege. The message was raw and clear. If we can't move forward, no one will. You could feel the shift in the air. This was no longer just a protest, it was a realization. That power doesn't belong to palaces or parliaments, it belongs to people who refuse to be silent. And then came the blackout. The government did what they always do, pulled the plug. Internet off. Journalists silenced. Cameras confiscated. They thought the story would die in the dark. But this isn't the Africa of the past. This is Africa 2025, young, connected, unafraid. You can shut down the internet. But you can't shut down awareness. Because today, the youth are the internet. You block one signal, 10 more rise through VPNs, satellites, and whispers carried across borders. You can't silence a generation that was born online. Within hours, Tanzanian voices broke through. Kenya spoke. Nigeria amplified. Ghana streamed. South Africa echoed. A digital rhythm started pulsing through the continent, fast, defiant, unstoppable. For the first time, Africa didn't wait for CNN or the BBC to tell its story. It told its own. And that changed everything. This wasn't just about Tanzania anymore. It was about Africa seeing itself. Hearing itself. Defending itself. For too long, the continent was convinced its pain was isolated. That Congo's struggles were different from Sudan's, that Zimbabwe's cries didn't echo in Uganda's. But suddenly, it all made sense. Different languages, same rhythm. Different borders, same wound. And that's when Africa realized something the world never wanted it to remember. That unity was its greatest threat to oppression. While Africa was finding its voice, the world looked away. Or worse, looked down. You see, there's this strange rhythm to how the world reacts to African pain. The moment Africa rises, Western governments suddenly discover their favorite phrase. We are deeply concerned. Then comes the copy-paste routine. We urge calm on all sides. We call for dialogue. As if revolution is a misunderstanding. You can almost hear the boredom in every line. Like there's a template somewhere in Washington or Brussels. Just change the country name, and hit send. But here's the truth. When people are bleeding, you don't ask them to calm down. You ask, who made them bleed? Neutrality, when you have power, isn't neutral at all. It's a side, and the world has chosen it for centuries. To understand Africa's rage, you have to remember its history. A history of extraction, not exchange. Where lines were drawn on maps by foreign hands. Where resources built empires, but never nations. The gold that lit up Europe. The oil that fueled Western cars. The diamonds that decorated crowns. All mined by hands that never saw their own reflection in the mirror of prosperity. And when those same hands rise to claim justice, the world calls it instability. When they demand fairness, they're told to be patient. But patience has an expiration date. And Africa just reached it. For decades, the narrative was simple. Africa was poor. Africa was chaotic. Africa needed help. But here's the new truth, Africa doesn't need saviors. It needs space to breathe. To define itself without permission. To rise without validation. Because freedom means nothing if it comes with foreign instructions. And progress means nothing if it's dictated from abroad. That's what the youth in Tanzania understood, and that's what the rest of the continent is learning now. That liberation isn't a gift, it's a muscle. And the more you use it, the stronger it gets. When the world went quiet, Africa finally started listening to itself. That silence, painful as it was, became a mirror. It forced a generation to stop waiting for applause, and start becoming its own validation. Maybe that's what frightens the powerful the most, a continent that no longer needs to be told it's right. A people who can look in the mirror and say, "We are enough." The silence revealed the truth. Africa's freedom won't come from speeches in foreign parliaments. It will come from classrooms in Dar es Salaam, from markets in Lagos, from villages in Malawi. From every young man and woman who decides that survival is no longer enough, they want dignity. And now, Africa stands at a crossroads. The question isn't whether it will rise, it already has. The real question is, will the world rise with it, or be left behind? Because what's happening in Tanzania isn't just politics, it's prophecy. It's a generation declaring, "We are done being the world's afterthought. We are the headline now." So maybe this isn't the beginning of chaos, maybe it's the beginning of clarity. Maybe the system isn't breaking down, maybe it's finally being exposed. Africa doesn't collapse under pressure. It evolves through it. And as Tanzania stands in the eye of this storm, the question that echoes across the continent, and the world, is this. If your voice was silenced, would you still whisper? Or would you scream until the silence breaks? If your country kept breaking your heart, would you leave it, or fight to fix it? Because revolutions don't start with armies. They start with people who have nothing left to lose, but everything to live for. This is not just Tanzania's story. This is Africa's awakening. And the world is finally out of excuses not to listen.